In 1941, the world stood at the edge of catastrophe. Across the oceans, empires burned and armies marched. The Axis powers, relentless, disciplined, and cruel, sought dominion over the earth. And then, one December morning, the rising sun of Japan cast its shadow across Pearl Harbor. In that single moment, America, a nation of farmers, factory workers, and free men, was called to war. The sleeping giant awoke. America, vast, determined, and united, would answer the call. Not with just soldiers, but with sweat, steel, and sacrifice. America's factories, so recently idled by the Great Depression, now face the greatest production challenge in history. Tanks, planes, ships, guns. A flood of steel and rubber and copper was needed. The factories could hum, the furnaces could roar, but the question loomed: where would the raw materials come from? By 1941, the world was at war. Factories in Europe had fallen under occupation, and the Axis powers pressed forward with unprecedented speed. The United States, though untouched on its soil, knew the war was inevitable. It needed ships, tanks, planes, guns, and it needed them fast. The president himself, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, had named the United States the arsenal of democracy, and now the arsenal must be fed. The nation's arsenal of democracy roared to life. Steel poured from furnaces, engines roared on assembly lines, and American ingenuity built the machines that would carry freedom across oceans and continents. But even the might of American industry faced a challenge. Resources were scarce, and the war machine demanded more than ever before. From Pennsylvania's steel mills to California's aircraft factories, the production lines worked day and night. Yet it was clear, to maintain this pace, America would need more metal, more rubber, more copper. And the answer lay not only in mines, but in the hands of its people. There were shortages everywhere. Steel mills cried out for scrap. Foundries needed copper. Rubber was vanishing. Japan had seized the plantations of the Far East, cutting off nearly all supply. The government moved swiftly. The War Production Board was established in January 1942 with the task of mobilizing every factory, every workshop, every warehouse in the country for war. Civilian production was slashed. No more new cars, no new refrigerators, no new washing machines. The assembly lines of peace became the production lines of war. The War Production Board launched the call to salvage. Every citizen could contribute by collecting scrap metal, rubber, paper, and fats.
Attention, citizens. This is a war for survival, and every bit of scrap you can turn in will help us win it. Gather your junk. Bring it to your local collection point. Scrap will win the war.
Posters appeared nationwide. Your scrap brought them there. Salvage for victory. When Japan cut off natural rubber supplies, America turned to synthetic production. But to bridge the gap, the government called for old tires, garden hoses, raincoats, and even rubber boots. Within weeks, millions of pounds of used rubber were collected. Towns staged rubber roundups. Gas stations offered free car washes or oil changes to anyone who brought in old tires. Paper drives became just as common. Families saved newspapers, magazines, and cardboard, vital for packing ammunition and supplies. Children tied the bundles with string, proud to see them stacked on the backs of army trucks. Even bones had value, rendered into glue, fertilizer, and glycerin, a key ingredient in explosives. Housewives were encouraged to save bones from meals and bring them to butchers or local depots. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts scoured neighborhoods. Schoolchildren carried wagons of tin cans and broken bicycles. Farmers brought plows and tractors to town collection points. Housewives saved kitchen fats for explosives. The newspapers called it the 6 weeks that saved the war. The results were astonishing. In 6 short weeks, Americans collected over 23 million tons of scrap metal, exceeding all expectations. The scrap that seemed ordinary became the foundation of tanks, planes, and ships. instruments of victory forged by the hands of a united people. The scrap drives became a movement. Children competed to bring in the most tin and aluminum. Farmers sacrificed equipment they had used for generations. Housewives gathered every pot, pan, and wire. Urban neighborhoods emptied basements and alleys, while factories collected scrap from assembly lines and offices. Civic groups, churches, and labor unions coordinated drives. Everywhere the message was the same. Nothing was too small, nothing was unimportant. Even public monuments were not spared. In some towns, cast iron statues of Civil War heroes were melted down for new wars. Schoolyards, town squares, and city lots became mountains of scrap, visible proof that every American could contribute to victory. One notable effort was the Aluminum for Aircraft campaign, where communities competed to gather kitchenware, ladders, and old signage made of aluminum. By the end of the campaign, millions of pounds of aluminum had been collected, enough to build thousands of fighter planes. By 1943, mountains of scrap dotted the nation. Steel, iron, aluminum, copper, tin, rubber, paper, and rags flowed to collection points. Every ton mattered. These mountains were transformed in Foundries of Freedom into tanks, ships, planes, and ammunition. Every pile of scrap represented the power of ordinary Americans working together to defeat tyranny. 24 million tons of iron and steel had been collected, formed the backbone of the American war effort. Every ton of scrap saved coal, iron ore, and labor, allowing mills to pour out tanks, battleships, and artillery at an unprecedented rate. 400,000 tons of tin had been salvaged, used for coatings, machinery, and munitions. 700,000 tons of rubber had been gathered, feeding the production of tires, gaskets, and belts of trucks, jeeps, and tanks. Rubber was the most elusive of materials, which inspired ingenuity. Gasoline hoses, tires, garden hoses, boots, all were gathered in huge quantities. Even the government issued a rubber rationing system. Millions of pounds of copper collected, the lifeblood of communications, wiring radios, radios for ships, field telephones, and electrical systems. Pennies were melted. Plumbing pipes were salvaged. One city in Pennsylvania collected over 100 tons of copper wire from abandoned buildings. Every foot meant better communication on the battlefield. Millions of pounds of aluminum were collected to feed the aircraft industry. In one notable drive, Americans collected enough aluminum from household items alone to build over 2,500 bombers. Pots, pans, ladders, even old soda signs, all melted down and reforged into wings, fuselages, and engines. Hundreds of millions of pounds of paper and rags were converted into packaging, explosives, and medical supplies. In the mills and factories, scrap metal was reborn. Iron and steel became tanks and liberty ships. Aluminum flowed into fighter planes and bombers. Copper powered radios and field telephones. Rubber became tires and gaskets. Women stepped into factories, learning to weld, rivet, and assemble. Men returned from training camps to master the industrial front. Every rivet, every weld, every bolt carried the story of a nation united. The railroads moved day and night, carrying the scrap to foundries where it was melted, refined, and reborn as tanks, planes, and ships. Henry Ford's factories turned out B-24 bombers instead of automobiles. The General Motors plants that once built Chevrolets now built tanks. In shipyards from California to Maine, workers riveted Liberty ships together in weeks, sometimes days, using recycled steel. From ordinary household objects to abandoned farm equipment, the scrap of America became the weapons of freedom. Behind the mountains of scrap were the ordinary Americans who gave extraordinary things. Children donated toys. Housewives turned in aluminum and kitchen fats. Farmers dismantled plows and fences. Communities emptied basements and yards. The sacrifices were personal, sometimes painful, yet universally understood. Every act of giving strengthened the nation's resolve. From the scrap collected in towns and schools, tanks rolled into battle, planes soared above enemy lines, and ships carried soldiers and supplies to distant shores. The home front was as crucial to victory as the battlefield itself. By 1945, the might of American industry and the courage of its citizens had turned the tide of war. Every tank, every ship, every plane carried the fingerprints of the home front. Every ton of steel, aluminum, copper, and rubber collected in schoolyards, factories, and farms had been forged into instruments of victory. Liberty ships crossed the oceans, tanks thundered across Normandy, fighter planes dominated the skies. The scrap that seemed ordinary in American homes had become the extraordinary tools of liberation. Victory had been forged in scrap. Freedom had been molded in steel, aluminum, and courage. America had proven that when its people unite, ordinary metal becomes extraordinary power, and ordinary citizens become the architects of victory. And the people who gave it, the farmers, the factory hands, the school children, were the true engineers of victory. They built the tanks, they built the planes, they built the ships, they built victory, all from scrap, all from the spirit of a free people. The scrap drives of America were more than a campaign. They were proof that democracy thrives when its people give freely, work tirelessly, and believe unwaveringly. And in every rivet, every weld, every turn of a wrench, the mountains of scrap became monuments. Monuments to unity, determination, and the enduring spirit of a nation. Thank you for watching. If we missed any part of this story, let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos from our channel.